Commander Jake Morrison watched the stars explode around his ship. The enemy lasers cut through space like angry red lightning. His frigate, the TSS Defiance, shook as another blast hit their shields. Shields down to 30%, shouted Lieutenant Sam Cooper from the pilot's seat. His hands moved fast over the controls, trying to keep them alive. Jake gripped his chair as the ship spun. Through the window, he could see the Kethver ships. They looked like giant black spiders, with too many legs. Their hulls gleamed with strange metal that seemed to eat light. 7 years of war, and the aliens still looked like nightmares. Sir, we need to get out of here. Sam's voice cracked with fear. Jake knew Sam was right. They had come to scout the enemy fleet, but what they found was worse than anyone expected. Hundreds of Kethver ships filled the space around them, maybe thousands, the largest fleet humanity had ever seen. Hold course for 10 more seconds, Jake ordered. We need to count them, count them. Sam turned to stare at his commander. Sir, they're going to kill us. Another explosion rocked the ship. The lights flickered. Jake could smell smoke in the air. His crew of 43 people depended on him to keep them alive. But the human fleet needed this information more. Alina, are you getting this? Jake spoke into his communicator. Dr. Alina Vescas's voice came through the static. Recording everything, Commander. The data is ... not good. Alina had been a prisoner of the Kethver for 6 months. She knew more about the aliens than anyone else who was still alive. When she escaped, she brought terrible news about their enemies. The Kethver were not just stronger than humans, they were smarter. They could talk to each other instantly across space. They could predict what humans would do before humans did it. They're moving to surround us, Sam reported. His voice was steady now, but Jake could see sweat on his forehead. Jake looked at the display screen. Red dots showed enemy ships. They moved like a pack of wolves, cutting off every escape route, but they moved too perfectly. Every ship knew exactly where to go. No confusion, no mistakes. Now, Sam, get us out of here. Sam's fingers flew over the controls. The Defiance turned and ran. Behind them, the Kethver ships followed, but they didn't hurry. They knew humans could not outrun them for long. The ship jumped to faster than light speed. Stars became lines of light. Then they were gone, racing toward the last human stronghold at Alpha Centauri. Jake slumped in his chair. Around him, his crew worked to fix the damage. Chief Engineer Tony Martinez crawled out from under a broken panel. His uniform was torn and covered in grease. We're lucky to be alive, Tony said. Those new weapons they have, our shields are like paper against them. Jake nodded. Every month, the Kethver weapons got better. Human technology could not keep up. The aliens had conquered 12 star systems. Earth itself was gone, destroyed 2 years ago. Only the colonies around Alpha Centauri remained. How many ships did we count? Jake asked Alina. Alina looked at her notes. Her face was pale. Over 3,000, maybe 4,000. And sir, ... they had something new. Ship designs I've never seen before. Jake felt his heart sink. The entire human fleet had less than 200 ships. Most were damaged from previous battles. Many were running low on supplies. When will they attack? He asked. Soon, Alina said. From what I learned as their prisoner, they like to finish things quickly. They see us as a problem to solve, not an enemy to fight. The ship's communication system buzzed. Admiral Kate Foster's voice filled the bridge. All ships, return to base immediately. We have received surrender demands from the Kethver. Jake closed his eyes. He had known this day would come. The aliens always offered surrender before the final battle. They thought it was efficient. Why waste time killing when the enemy could just give up? What are the terms? Jake asked. Unconditional surrender. Humans would become workers for the Kethver Empire. We would be allowed to live, but not to rule ourselves. Jake thought about his daughter. She was only 8 years old, living in the underground cities of Alpha Centauri. If humans surrendered, she would grow up as a slave. But if they fought, she would probably die. How long do we have to decide? He asked. 24 hours. The Kethfer fleet will arrive in 3 days. The communication ended. The bridge was quiet, except for the hum of the engines. Jake looked at his crew. These people had followed him through 7 years of losing battles. They trusted him to make the right choice. Sir, Sam said quietly. What do we do? Jake stood up and walked to the window. The stars looked the same as always, beautiful and distant. But somewhere out there, an alien fleet was coming to end humanity's freedom forever. We fight, he said. We've been fighting the wrong way, but we fight. Elena looked up from her notes. Commander, I've been thinking about something. During my captivity, I noticed the Kethfer get confused when things don't go as planned. They're very good at predicting logical behavior. But humans, we're not always logical. What do you mean? Jake asked. They study our battles. They learn our patterns. They know exactly what we'll do because we follow military rules. But what if we stopped following the rules? Tony laughed, but it was not a happy sound. Lady, we're about to face the biggest fleet in the galaxy. This is not the time for wild ideas. Maybe it's exactly the time, Elena said. We've tried everything else. We've tried being better soldiers, better strategists, better engineers. None of it worked. What if we tried being better humans? Jake turned from the window. Outside, the stars waited. In 3 days, the Kethfer would arrive. Humanity would make its last stand. But Elena's words stayed in his mind. What if they tried being better humans? The Defiance raced through space, carrying news of the coming storm. Behind them, the largest alien fleet in history prepared for what should be an easy victory. They had calculated every possibility. They had planned for every human strategy. They had not planned for humanity to stop being predictable. The war was about to change, but nobody knew it yet. The meeting room was full of tired faces. Admiral Kate Foster sat at the head of the table, looking older than her 50 years. Around her, the last commanders of the human fleet argued about surrender. We can't win this, said Captain Lisa Brooks. She commanded the Marines, the soldiers who fought on planets and ships. 4,000 alien ships against our 160. It's not a battle. It's suicide. Jake Morrison disagreed. We've been losing for 7 years. If we surrender now, it was all for nothing. Better to live as slaves than die as fools, muttered Commander Rick Stone. His ship had lost half its crew in the last battle. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood up. I lived as their prisoner for 6 months. I know what they do to humans. They capture. Death might be better. The room went quiet. Everyone knew Elena's story. The Kethfer had taken her when they destroyed the research station at Titan. She had seen things that gave her nightmares. Tell them, Admiral Foster said. Elena walked to the front of the room. The Kethfer have 4 different species working together. They think with one mind. When one ship learns something, all ships know it instantly. They see war as a math problem. Input data, calculate result, execute solution. We know all this, Captain Brooks said. What's your point? My point is that they're too perfect. They can't understand mistakes. They can't understand when someone does something stupid on purpose. Chief Engineer Tony Martinez leaned forward. Are you saying we should make mistakes? I'm saying we should stop trying to be perfect soldiers. We should start being human. Jake remembered his conversation with Elena on the ship. What exactly are you suggesting? Elena activated a holographic display. It showed the battle at Kepler Station from last month. Human ships moved in perfect formation, following textbook tactics. The Kethfer ships responded with perfect countermoves. Humans lost. Look at this, Elena said. Our ships do exactly what the training manuals say. The aliens study our manuals. They know what we'll do before we do it. So what's the alternative? Admiral Foster asked. Alina switched to a different recording. It showed a small skirmish from 3 days ago. A human patrol ship had engine trouble and started moving in random directions. The Kethver ships chasing it couldn't figure out where it was going. By the time they adapted, the human ship had escaped. That was an accident, said Captain Brooks. Was it? Alina smiled. Lieutenant Cooper was flying that ship. Sam, tell them what you were thinking. Sam Cooper stood up. He was young, maybe 25, with the quick reflexes that made him a good pilot. Well, ma'am, the engine was damaged, but I noticed the aliens kept trying to predict where I'd go next. So I started going places that didn't make sense. Confused the hell out of them. You confused them by being unpredictable, Alina said. That's what humans do best. We're chaos engines. We do things that don't make logical sense. Commander Stone shook his head. This is crazy talk. Wars aren't won by being random. They're won by being better. Have we been better? Jake asked. 7 years of war. We've lost every major battle. Maybe it's time to try something different. Admiral Foster studied the display. What would this look like in practice? Alina had been waiting for this question. We stopped following standard battle formations. We use damaged equipment instead of fixing it. We make decisions based on emotion instead of logic. We become everything the Kethver don't expect. You want us to fight with broken ships? Tony asked. I want us to fight like humans. Look, I spent 6 months watching the Kethver. They're like a computer program. Feed them the right data, and they'll give you the right answer every time. But what happens when you feed a computer program impossible data? It crashes, Tony said slowly. Exactly. We've been trying to outcompute them. Instead, we should try to crash their system. The room buzzed with conversation. Some commanders looked interested. Others looked horrified. Admiral Foster raised her hand for silence. Dr. Vasquez, this is the most insane military strategy I've ever heard. But you're right about one thing. Everything else has failed. She turned to Jake. Commander Morrison, what do you think? Jake thought about his daughter, about the children hiding in the underground cities, about humanity's last chance. I think we've been fighting their war, he said. Maybe it's time to fight our war. What does that mean? Captain Brooks asked. It means we stop trying to be perfect. We start being human. The debate continued for hours. Some commanders wanted to surrender. Others wanted to fight one last conventional battle. But slowly, Elena's idea gained support. Dr. Alex Turner, the quantum physicist, stood up. I've been working on weapons the Kethver would consider impossible. They violate several laws of physics. I never tested them because they seemed too dangerous. How dangerous? Admiral Foster asked. They might not work at all, or they might work too well, or they might work in ways we don't expect. Alina smiled. Perfect. That's exactly what we need. Weapons that are so unpredictable that even we don't know what they'll do. Tony Martinez raised his hand. I've got a warehouse full of broken equipment. Engines that work backward. Shields that let some attacks through but stop others. I was going to scrap it all. Don't scrap it, Jake said. Use it. Make our ships as unpredictable as possible. Sam Cooper was grinning now. I've got a whole squadron of pilots who've been getting in trouble for not following orders. Maybe it's time to let them loose. Admiral Foster looked around the room. This is madness, but it's the only madness we have left. She stood up. We have 48 hours before the Kethver arrive. Dr. Vasquez, I'm putting you in charge of this chaos strategy. Make it work. Alina nodded. I'll need complete freedom to break military protocol. You have it. Commander Morrison, I want you to work with her. If we're going to be unpredictable, we need someone who understands both military tactics and human nature. Jake saluted. Yes, ma'am. What about the civilian evacuation? It continues as planned. But now, maybe, they'll have something to come back to. As the meeting broke up, Alina walked over to Jake. Are you sure about this? If I'm wrong, we're all dead. Jake looked out the window at the stars. If you're wrong, we're all dead anyway. At least this way, we die fighting like humans instead of trying to be something we're not. Alina smiled. You know, in all my research on the HFY, I found one thing they truly fear. What's that? The unknown. They fear things they can't calculate or predict. For the first time in this war, we're about to become something they can't understand. The next 2 days would be the strangest in military history. Human engineers would break their own equipment on purpose. Pilots would practice flying badly. Soldiers would learn to ignore their training. The HFY fleet was coming, confident of an easy victory. They had calculated every possible human response. They had planned for every logical strategy. They had not planned for humanity to embrace chaos. The war was about to become very different. The HFY fleet arrived exactly on schedule. 4,000 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. They moved like a single organism, each ship knowing its place without being told. Admiral Kate Foster watched them from the bridge of her flagship. The alien ships were beautiful in a terrifying way. Their black holes reflected no light, making them look like holes in space. But she could see them on the sensors, arranged in mathematical patterns that hurt to look at. They're not attacking, reported her communications officer. They single quotes, waiting. For what? Foster asked. Unknown, ma'am. They're just sitting there in formation. Foster understood. The HFY were giving humans one last chance to surrender. They believed in efficiency. Why waste ammunition when fear might do the job? But the human fleet was not sitting still. Across the solar system, ships moved in patterns that looked like madness. Some flew in spirals, others moved backward. A few spun in circles for no reason anyone could see. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiance. His ship looked like a disaster. Chief Engineer Tony Martinez had spent 2 days breaking things on purpose. The shields flickered on and off. The engines made strange noises. Half the lights didn't work. Status report, Jake said. All systems are perfectly malfunctioning. Tony replied with a grin. The weapons fire in random directions. The navigation computer thinks we're upside down, and the artificial gravity works only on Tuesdays. Lieutenant Sam Cooper laughed from the pilot's seat. Sir, I've never been more ready for a fight. My flying today will make no sense at all. Dr. Alina Vasquez was on the bridge, watching the HFY fleet through her instruments. They're scanning us, she said, trying to understand what we're doing. What are their computers telling them? Jake asked. That we're malfunctioning, that our fleet is falling apart. They think we're not a threat. Good. Let them think that. Across the system, other human ships were preparing their own chaos. Captain Lisa Brooks had her Marines practicing the strangest battle tactics in history. Instead of following orders, they were learning to follow their instincts. Instead of working together, they were learning to work apart. Dr. Alex Turner was in his laboratory, making final adjustments to weapons that should not exist. His quantum torpedoes used principles that the HFY would find impossible. They worked by not working, succeeded by failing. These weapons will either save us or destroy us, he told his assistant. Maybe both. The HFY fleet began to move. Their ships advanced in perfect waves, like a tide of darkness. They had calculated the exact force needed to destroy the human fleet. No more, no less. Here they come, Admiral Foster announced on the fleet communication channel. Remember, people, don't be soldiers today. Be human. The first wave of HFY ships opened fire. Their weapons were precise, targeting the most logical weak points on human ships. But the human ships were no longer logical. The Defiance took a direct hit on what should have been a critical system. Instead of exploding, the ship started flying faster. "How is that possible?" Tony asked, staring at his instruments. "I don't know," Jake replied, "but I'll take it." Sam Cooper was piloting the ship in patterns that made no sense. He flew toward enemy fire, then suddenly changed direction. He spun the ship while shooting, making their weapons point in random directions. The Kethver ships couldn't predict where he was going, because Sam didn't know where he was going. "Enemy ship directly ahead," Sam reported. "Engaging with whatever happens next." The Defiance's broken weapons fired. Instead of normal laser beams, they shot bursts of energy that changed color and direction. One beam hit a Kethver ship and made it turn bright pink. Another beam seemed to make an enemy ship forget how to fly. "What did we just do?" Jake asked. "I have no idea," Tony replied, "but it's working." Across the battle, human ships were discovering the power of chaos. Dr. Turner's impossible weapons were creating effects that violated physics. Some enemy ships disappeared. Others turned into flowers. One Kethver ship started playing music. Captain Brooks was leading a boarding party onto an enemy ship. Instead of using standard tactics, her Marines were acting like they were at a party. They sang songs, told jokes, and completely ignored military protocol. The Kethver defenders didn't know how to respond. "This is Unit 7 Alpha," Brooks reported over the radio. "We've taken the enemy bridge. Bye." "I'm not sure what we did, but it worked." The Kethver fleet was starting to show signs of confusion. Their perfect formations were breaking apart. Ships that had moved in harmony for thousands of years were now struggling to coordinate. Alina was monitoring the alien communications. "They're trying to adapt," she told Jake, "but they can't. Every time they think they understand what we're doing, we do something different. Because we don't understand what we're doing either," Jake said. "Exactly. You can't predict chaos. You can only experience it." The battle was becoming stranger by the minute. Human ships were fighting in ways that defied all logic. They used their weaknesses as strengths. They turned their failures into victories. They did everything wrong, and somehow, it was working. Sam Cooper found himself in a dogfight with 3 Kethver fighters. Instead of trying to outfly them, he started flying like he was drunk. The enemy pilots couldn't figure out where he was going, because his flight path looked like a drunken butterfly. "I'm getting dizzy," Sam reported. "But so are they." The Kethver ships were designed to fight logical opponents. They could predict and counter any reasonable strategy. But humans had stopped being reasonable. They had embraced the chaos that made them human. Admiral Foster watched the battle from her command ship for the first time in 7 years. Human ships were winning, not by being better soldiers, but by being human. "Status report," she called. "Enemy fleet is in disarray," her tactical officer reported. "They're trying to regroup, but our ships keep doing things that don't make sense." "How many have we lost?" 12 ships damaged, 3 destroyed. "But ma'am, we've destroyed over 200 enemy ships, and we've captured 15 more." Foster could hardly believe it. In 7 years of war, humans had never captured a single Kethver ship. Now they had 15. "How is this possible?" she asked. Elena's voice came over the communication system. "Admiral, the Kethver are trying to understand us, but understanding chaos is impossible. The more they try to figure us out, the more confused they become." The battle continued for hours. Human ships fought in ways that made no sense. They used broken weapons, damaged systems, and impossible tactics. And somehow, it was working. The Kethver fleet, which had conquered 12 star systems, was being defeated by humans who had stopped trying to be logical. They were losing to chaos, to emotion, to the very unpredictability that made humans human. But the war was not over. The Kethver were learning, adapting, trying to understand their new enemy. And deep in their fleet, something was changing. The perfect order that had made them strong was about to become their greatest weakness. The battle had been raging for 6 hours. The space around Alpha Centauri was filled with the wreckage of both fleets, but for the first time in 7 years, more of the wreckage was alien than human. Corporal Danny Walsh was not supposed to be in space. He was a Marine, trained to fight on planets and inside ships. But the transport vessel he was on had gotten separated from the main fleet during the chaos of battle. "Where are we?" asked Private Jenny Mills, the soldier sitting next to him. She was 19 years old and had never been in a real battle before. Danny looked out the small window. He could see the lights of weapons fire in the distance, but they were alone in the darkness. "I don't know," he admitted, "but it's not good." The transport ship Lucky Break was carrying 40 Marines to reinforce a damaged human cruiser. But the cruiser was gone now, destroyed or fled. The Lucky Break was alone, with no weapons and no real armor. "Sir," called the pilot from the front of the ship, "we've got company. 3 Kethver ships, coming fast." Danny unbuckled his seatbelt and moved to the pilot's seat. Through the front window, he could see the enemy ships. They looked like black spiders with glowing red eyes. They were beautiful and terrifying. "Can we outrun them?" Danny asked. The pilot, a young woman named Sarah Kim, shook her head. "No chance. They're faster than us, and our communication system is down. We can't even call for help." Danny thought about the orders he had received. In a situation like this, military protocol was clear. Try to escape. If escape was impossible, surrender. Don't throw away lives for nothing. But Danny Walsh had never been good at following orders. That's why he was still a corporal after 8 years in the Marines. He made decisions with his heart, not his head. "How long before they reach us?" he asked. 2 minutes, Sarah replied. "Maybe less." Danny looked back at the other Marines. They were all young, all scared. Some had families back on Alpha Centauri. Others were fighting for friends who had already died. All of them were depending on him to make the right choice. The smart choice was to surrender. The logical choice was to save their lives. Danny Walsh had never been smart or logical. "Change course," he told Sarah. "Head straight for the big one." Sarah stared at him. "Sir, did you say straight for them?" "You heard me. Ram that ship, sir. That's suicide. We don't have any weapons. We're just a transport." "We're not just a transport. We're a missile. A 40-ton missile filled with very angry humans." The other Marines heard him. Some looked scared. Others looked excited. Private Mills stood up. "Sir, are you sure about this?" Danny thought about his sister. She was a teacher in one of the underground cities. If the Kethber won, she would spend the rest of her life as a slave. Her students would grow up in chains. "I'm sure," Danny said. "Sarah, take us in, fast as you can." Sarah's hands shook as she changed course. The Lucky Break turned toward the enemy ships. Through the window, Danny could see the Kethver vessels growing larger. "They're trying to communicate with us," Sarah reported. "Demanding surrender. Don't answer," Danny said. "Let them figure it out." The Kethver ships were confused. The human transport was flying directly at them, but it had no weapons. It made no sense. Their computers ran calculations, trying to understand what the humans were planning. But Danny Walsh wasn't planning anything. He was acting on pure instinct, pure emotion. He was doing what felt right, not what made sense. 30 seconds to impact, Sarah said. Her voice was calm now. She had made her choice too. Danny grabbed the ship's communication system. "This is Corporal Danny Walsh of the Terran Marines. We're about to hit you very hard. You picked the wrong species to fight." The Kethber ships fired their weapons. Energy beams cut through space, hitting the Lucky Break. The ship shook and parts of it caught fire, but it didn't stop. 10 seconds, Sarah said. Danny closed his eyes. He thought about his sister, about the children in the underground cities, about all the humans who had died in this war. He thought about the future he wanted for his species. Then the lucky break hit the HFY command ship. The explosion was enormous. The transport ship was destroyed instantly. But the HFY vessel was crippled. Its hull was torn open, its systems failing. Danny Walsh should have died in that explosion. But the universe has a sense of humor. The blast threw him through a hole in the enemy ship's hull. He landed in an alien corridor, bruised and bleeding but alive. Around him, the HFY ship was dying. Lights flickered. Alien voices spoke in panic. Danny could hear the sound of systems shutting down. He stood up slowly. His military training told him to find an escape pod, to get off the ship before it exploded. But Danny Walsh had stopped following his training. Instead, he started walking deeper into the ship. The corridors were strange. The walls curved in ways that hurt to look at. The air smelled like metal and electricity. But Danny kept walking, following the sound of alien voices. He found them in a large room filled with glowing screens. Dozens of HFY creatures worked at control panels, their forearms moving in perfect coordination. They looked like giant insects with too many eyes. The aliens saw Danny and stopped working. They stared at him with confusion. A human on their ship made no sense. Their computers had no protocols for this situation. Danny looked around the room. He didn't understand the alien technology, but he understood destruction. He pulled out his sidearm and started shooting. He shot random panels, random screens, random pieces of equipment. He had no idea what any of it did. He was just breaking things, creating chaos in the heart of order. The HFY creatures tried to stop him, but they moved too slowly. They were used to coordinated attacks, planned responses. Danny Walsh was chaos in motion, unpredictable and unstoppable. He shot a large panel covered in lights. It exploded in a shower of sparks. Suddenly, every screen in the room went dark. The alien voices rose in panic. Danny didn't know it, but he had just destroyed the fleet's coordination center. The system that allowed 4,000 ships to move as one was gone, replaced by silence. Across the battle, HFY ships suddenly stopped moving in formation. For the first time in their history, they were acting as individuals instead of a collective. They were confused, frightened, alone. Commander Jake Morrison saw it happen from the bridge of the Defiance. One moment the enemy fleet was moving in perfect coordination. The next, they were scattered and confused. What just happened? He asked. Dr. Elena Vasquez was studying her instruments. I don't know, but their communication network just went silent. They can't talk to each other anymore. Jake smiled. Then, let's give them something to talk about. The human fleet pressed their advantage. Ships that had been fighting for survival were now winning. The HFY, cut off from their collective intelligence, were making mistakes. And in the heart of the enemy command ship, Corporal Danny Walsh continued his rampage. He had no plan, no strategy, no idea what he was doing. He was just a Marine with a gun, breaking things because it felt right. He had changed the war by refusing to be logical, by choosing chaos over order, by being human when it mattered most. The perfect enemy was about to learn that perfection was a weakness when faced with beautiful, chaotic, unpredictable humanity. The HFY fleet was falling apart. Without their coordination network, 4,000 ships became 4,000 separate problems. They bumped into each other, fired at empty space, and moved in circles. Commander Jake Morrison watched the chaos from his damaged bridge. The Defiance was barely holding together, but it was still fighting. Around them, human ships pressed their advantage against the confused aliens. Status report, Jake called. Enemy fleet is in complete disarray, reported Lieutenant Sam Cooper. They're trying to regroup, but they don't know how to fight without their collective mind. Dr. Elena Vasquez was monitoring alien communications. They're panicking. Listen to this. She played a recording of HFY voices, Translated by the computer. Unit 7 Alpha, what are your orders? Unit 7 Alpha, respond. Someone give us orders. We don't know what to do. Jake felt something he hadn't felt in 7 years. Hope. They've never had to think for themselves, Elena continued. For thousands of years, they've been part of a collective. Now they're individuals, and they don't know how to handle it. On the enemy command ship, Corporal Danny Walsh was still causing havoc. He had found the ship's main power core and was trying to figure out how to destroy it. The alien crew was running around in panic, trying to stop him. But Danny Walsh was no longer just one Marine. He was chaos personified. Every action he took was unpredictable. Every decision driven by emotion instead of logic. He found a control panel covered in blinking lights. He didn't know what it did, but it looked important. He shot it. The lights went out all over the ship. Emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in red light. The Kethver creatures made sounds of distress. Danny smiled. He was having the time of his life. Back on the human flagship, Admiral Kate Foster was coordinating the final assault. The tide of battle had turned completely. Human ships were capturing or destroying enemy vessels faster than anyone had thought possible. Admiral, her communications officer called. We're getting surrender requests from individual Kethver ships. They want to give up. Foster couldn't believe it. Are you sure? Yes, ma'am. 17 ships so far. They're asking for mercy. A voice came over the radio. Admiral, this is exactly what I hoped would happen. Without their collective mind, they're just scared individuals. They don't want to die for a cause they no longer understand. Foster made a decision that would change history. Accept their surrenders, but keep fighting the ones that resist. The battle continued, but it was no longer a battle. It was a rout. The Kethber ships that didn't surrender were destroyed or captured. The ones that did surrender were taken prisoner. Captain Lisa Brooks was leading boarding parties onto enemy ships. Instead of fighting to the death, the Kethver crews were giving up. They looked at the chaotic humans with confusion and fear. It's like they've never seen disorder before, Brooks reported. They don't know how to deal with it. Dr. Alex Turner was studying the captured alien technology. Their entire civilization is based on perfect order. Everything has its place, its purpose, its role. But humans, we're chaos engines. We thrive on disorder. The final moment came when the largest Kethver ship, the one carrying their supreme commander, sent a message to the human fleet. We request communication with your leader, the translated message said. We wish to discuss terms. Admiral Foster smiled. After 7 years of losing, humanity was about to win. She met with the Kethver Supreme Commander on a neutral space station. The alien was tall and thin, with 4 arms and large black eyes. It moved with perfect grace, but Foster could see fear in its posture. We do not understand, the alien said through a translator. Your species was defeated. We had calculated your complete surrender. How did you win? Foster thought about Elena's words, about Danny Walsh's sacrifice, about all the humans who had chosen chaos over order. We won by being human, she said. You tried to fight perfect soldiers, but we stopped being soldiers. We became something you couldn't predict or understand. The alien commander tilted its head. This chaos you speak of, it is your strength. It's what makes us human. We don't always make sense. We don't always do the logical thing. Sometimes we do stupid, brave, impossible things just because they feel right. We have studied your species for years. We understood your technology, your tactics, your strategies. But we did not understand your chaos. Foster nodded. That's why you lost. You can't study chaos. You can only experience it. The surrender was signed 3 days later. The Kethver Empire, which had conquered dozens of star systems, agreed to return all human territory and pay reparations. In exchange, humans would teach them about individual thinking and chaotic problem-solving. Some of the alien species in the HFY Confederation wanted to learn from humans. Others wanted nothing to do with the chaos that had defeated them. The perfect unity that had made them strong was breaking apart. Corporal Danny Walsh was found alive in the wreckage of the command ship. He had somehow survived the complete destruction of the vessel's power core. When asked how he had lived through the explosion, he just shrugged. "I don't know," he said. "Nothing I did today made sense, but it worked." Danny became a hero, but he didn't want the attention. He went back to his unit and continued being a Marine. He still didn't follow orders very well, but now nobody seemed to mind. Dr. Alina Vasquez became the first human ambassador to the former HFY Empire. Her job was to teach aliens about human chaos and help them understand individual thinking. "It's not easy," she reported. "They're used to everyone thinking the same way. The idea that different people can have different opinions is revolutionary to them." Commander Jake Morrison was promoted to admiral. His first order was to change military training. Instead of teaching perfect tactics, human soldiers now learned to be unpredictable. "We're not going to fight like aliens anymore," he announced. "We're going to fight like humans. Chaotic, emotional, unpredictable humans." The war was over, but its effects would last forever. Other alien species throughout the galaxy heard about the humans who had defeated the mighty HFY through chaos. Some wanted to study them, others wanted to avoid them. Humanity had become known as the Chaos Species. Their reputation spread across the stars. They were the beings who turned weakness into strength, who made failure into victory, who won by losing Lieutenant Sam Cooper, now a squadron commander, was training new pilots. He taught them to fly in ways that made no sense, to embrace their mistakes, to trust their instincts over their instruments. "Remember," he told his students, "the enemy can predict logic. They can prepare for strategy, but they can't prepare for chaos. So be chaotic. Be human." The galaxy was changing. The perfect order that had ruled for thousands of years was giving way to something new, something unpredictable, something human. And in the underground cities of Alpha Centauri, children played games that made no sense. They laughed at jokes that weren't funny. They drew pictures that looked like nothing. They were being human. And for the first time in 7 years, that was exactly what the galaxy needed. The war was over. Humanity had won not by becoming better soldiers, but by becoming better humans. They had embraced their chaos, their unpredictability, their beautiful, impossible humanity. And the universe would never be the same. The victory belonged to them all. But it had started with one human who refused to follow orders, who chose chaos over logic, who changed the war by changing himself. Corporal Danny Walsh had shown the galaxy what humans could do when they stopped trying to be perfect and started being human. The stars were waiting, and humanity was ready to be wonderfully, chaotically, impossibly human among them.